Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a good weekend. Want to talk about Superman. This was the genius of James Gunn. So we're going to talk about why I thought, despite some of the criticism of the film, why I thought James Gunn nailed this film, and why I feel we now have Superman back. Something we haven't quite seen in a very long time, in my opinion. And finally, I think I understand why they wasn't able to make a good Superman film up to now. Why I had to keep rebooting and such. And so we're also going to get into spoilers. So I'm going to try to give a warning before the spoilers get heavy, just in case you haven't seen the movie. If you're a Superman fan, you should have seen that movie on opening day, right? That's how the real Superman fans do it. So we're going to get into all that, and I'm going to try to explain why I think they were failing and why James Gunn got everything correct. So first off, James Gunn, he, I think, did something that I hadn't seen done with a Superman film yet. And that is, James Gunn seemingly put every element of the Superman mythos in this film. So what you end up getting, you kind of got what would be a more serious Superman film. I mean, emotionally off the comic book pages, right? That's something that a lot of people, I think, wanted to see done correctly, yet embody what Superman was. So you get that realistic feeling movie, right? And then you get that straight from the comic books Superman movie, right? Where you got all the Superman elements in there. And so you get a movie that it's gravity, where it's kind of the serious parts. I know a lot of people were saying, well, you know, it's the goofiness, and they didn't want to deal with the goofiness, and it was taken away from the film. But comic books, there are elements in most every comic book where there is that goofiness, right? And I think James Gunn does a good job of putting those elements in, and yet being able to give us this complete film. And I think that's what's been missing. I think that's why a lot of people, they're looking at the Superman film and they're going, okay, I like this film. You know, why does it feel kind of strange at times that I like it? I feel like something should be missing, but maybe it isn't missing, and that's because you're trying to figure out what type of Superman film this was trying to be. The answer is, it's all of them put together, and that's something we haven't seen done in a Superman film. I think even when we go back to the first Superman film, that to many is the pinnacle, right? And I agree, it's the pinnacle. But here's the thing. Here's the thing we have to understand about that, right? You go back to the pinnacle, you got these great Oscar-worthy, great actors in it that bring that heavy weight to it. Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, right? And most of our Superman, or most who we perceive to be the best, Chris Reeves, right? When that enters into that film becomes so heavy, right? That even though we know it's a comic book film, we feel it's a comic book film that's being a real movie, right? Whereas in James Gunn, we feel it's a comic book film that's being a comic book film movie, but it has elements of a real life film in it, right? So I think those are kind of saying different things, but James Gunn manages to balance it all, unlike we've ever seen before in a Superman film, right? And so I think it's very important we pay attention to those characteristics, right? Now let's get into the a very pivotal situation in the James Gunn depiction of Superman. Why it had to go this way. Like, you know, I know if you're a Snyderverse fan, you're going, oh man, this is just stupid, and this is going to be a stupid world building situation for Superman. But here's what you got to understand. It's a reason that this film needed to go that way, and it's a reason that I like the where it starts at, where it doesn't start at, the origin story of Superman. Because here's the problem, guys. We've seen the origin stories of Superman done in pretty much every version of Superman, I think, but this one, right? Well, there's a very, very but I wouldn't call it an origin story, right? You know, you kind of see these little flashback clips or whatever, but not anything like we've seen done in other versions of Superman, right? And why I think that was important, because I think the origin stories of Superman has been done so well. They don't need any reboots. We don't need to tell that story over and over and over again, right? Superman meets Zod. Superman, you know what I mean, meets Lex Luthor and so on. Even though Lex Luthor is the, you know, is like the main, you know, I guess you could say, guy in the story, right? But or villain. But it's a reason it needed to go this way, and that is, this is going to be like a vast universe, DC, right? So this had to be a launch pad, right? Superman didn't need to be rebooted, right? So what you need to do is you needed to get Superman in a more vast world of these metahumans, which is what they did. And I was relieved to see that, because as a lifelong Superman fan, I've just seen the origin story done over and over again. It's been done very, very well. It's been done the best it can be done. Doesn't need to be done again, guys. I know a lot of people wanted, we want a standalone Superman, film. You know, we want to just be Superman, right? Nobody else. Let's focus on Superman. This is our first introduction to Superman. But many of these elements of Superman, I thought David Cornsworth got right, was well done, and it was enough to catapult us forward into where this Superman's going, yet be connected to all the past histories of Superman, right? That makes sense, right? So all of that makes sense when you think about all these various, it's a lot of characters in the DC universe. It's a lot. It's as many as Marvel, probably, right? So, you know, we're already seeing several of them show up. They're already gelling well with this type of Superman. So, bottom line, this is going to be a Superman that's going to be able to be intermingled into the world building of a large cast of DC characters, which is what we're likely going to see. We're going to see DC characters brought to the silver screen we haven't seen before. And I think that's quite important, because if you think about the Chris Reeve Superman, would he gel? He wouldn't work well with the other Justice League members. I think looking at the Chris Reeve Superman is similar to looking at the Matt Reeves version of Batman. These are very much standalone characters. They're awesome as standalone in their specific worlds, but it's time to move the Superman story along. Now we want to see him interact with other characters. I'm on team for that, right? I want to see Superman go into areas, go into universes, go places in outer space we haven't seen him before on the silver screen. And in order to do that, I think successfully, you're going to need someone like James Gunn, right? James Gunn fits that bill. You look at the Snyderverse Superman, I wasn't a big fan of how he intermingled with those, you know, with the other Justice League metahumans. We saw that. You know, some people liked it. You can kind of still see there was goofiness in it. You know, you had the goofiness with the Flash, and you had goofiness with Aquaman, and maybe that was not Zack Snyder, but the person who took over for Zack Snyder, who his name escapes me for now, the director we know from all the TV shows like Buffy. I don't know why I can't think of his name right now, but he kind of, you could tell he was kind of leaning more to the comic booky stuff, where I think Zack was staying away from that. He was making a serious Batman-like version of Superman, right, that a lot of us true Superman fans didn't like. And so he gets, latched on to the Justice League, and a lot of those characters, they're dark just like Superman, right? These are scary type aliens, and it's just not embodying the spirit of the goodness of Superman, right? But anyway, now we're going to start to get into spoilers into the movie. So, guys, if you don't want to be spoiled, you haven't seen the movie yet, it's probably time to leave, because I will be dabbing into that. So, all right, so let me jump right into the movie, right? I like this movie. How do I rate it? I'm going to give it an A, right? I'm going to give it an A simply because it takes Superman into his own world, own element, something the other Supermans I don't think done successfully. I think James Gunn's probably the only person who could have done this successfully, right? Because you gotta have an expansive, strange mind like James Gunn, I think, to get to that area, that zone, where you could do a Superman movie like this. I don't think anybody could have thought about this any other way, right? So, let's get to it. The pacing of the film moved along great, right? In every Superman film, in every one I've watched, right? Every Superman film, there's been just, and you guys probably know what I'm talking about when you watch long movies, right? This movie wasn't super long, but I think it would be considered more on the long end, right? Compared to many movies we see today. But not too long, but enough that you're going to get just enough. You're going to get enough of the film. Some people say they wanted more of it. I think he got enough. The pacing was excellent. I never found like a moment where I'm ready for the movie to move along. If the complaint is people wanted more in this film, that makes sense, because if anything, I felt like the movie was moving along fantastically well, right? It moved great. It got what it needed to be done, and it moved on. I like that. I never like when I feel like it's wasted time in a film. So they did excellent on that. The actors themselves, some people complained about Lex Luthor. I thought Lex Luthor was fine, right? I wouldn't class him as the best Lex Luthor. He wasn't the best Lex Luthor, but he was kind of like this young Lex Luthor who I felt fit enough of the elements of, he embodied all the elements of what we know to be Lex Luthor, right, in a package. And I thought that was a fairly complete Lex Luthor, right? I don't think he was the most in depth. I don't think he was like the greatest actor or anything like that in there. But I thought he did a great job, right? So Nicholas Hoult, whereas I like him as an actor, him playing Lex Luthor would be a win for me, because I would give him an A rating, because I just didn't see him. So he kind of surprised me. I didn't really all the way see him as Lex Luthor. I was always kind of like, okay, is he gonna work? And I think he worked, right? So in that regard, the surprise element, giving a boost to that, I would give him an 8. David Cornsweet, excellent Superman. He gets Superman down all the way. It's a Chris Reeves type feeling, and then he can move into he fits well in the comic book world. Like, he doesn't feel like he's outside that world. Whereas I could kind of see, like, if Christopher Reeves was in a movie like this, I could see him being outside that world. I definitely could see Henry Cavill being outside that world. David Cornsweet can move in between the comic book world and the real world. Excellent, right? And Chris Reeves could do it too. But maybe not on this level, right? So David Cornswell, he might end up being the best Superman of all Supermans, right? Simply because I just think he has it. He has that versatility, unlike I've seen before. I think to be fair to Chris Reeves, when Chris Reeves, did it, he had done many productions, right? I think he was a very fresh out of Juilliard type actor, which David Cornswell comes out of Juilliard as well. So, but David Cornswell seemed like he was a little bit more poised in his first run as Superman, and excellent. We have, I believe, the greatest Lois Lane we've had since Margot Kidder, right? Hands down. I can't remember her name for whatever reason, but she gets it. She totally nails Lois Lane. It's believable, right? Now, some people were saying that the chemistry was a little tiny bit off, not badly off, but I've heard some people say, well, yeah, they were genuinely, energy romantically, compatible in the film. And I think they definitely was. I think any resistance, because I was trying to say, I do feel, what is this resistance I'm getting? Because if you kind of make a comparison between Margot Kidder and Chris Reeves, right? It was more like she was kind of putty in his hands, right? A very high level of respect throughout most of the film. But you got to remember, Margot Kidder, through the majority of the Superman films, didn't know he was Clark Kent. There's a different dynamic. This Lois Lane is tapping into the human elements of Superman, so she knows he's a regular guy, Clark Kent, with flaws. And so, much like in a normal relationship, she's not seeing him as a god. She's seeing the flawed Clark Kent and Superman, right? So it's kind of going to where I feel like it's a situation where he's more into her than she's into him, right? As we can see in the film, and she's going, well, I thought this was a bad idea. Margot Kidder, would she be saying that? Probably after she knew he was Clark Kent, maybe in a situation like what we got in Superman 2, where he gives up his powers for her. But it was always kind of like Superman was the good boy, more into Lois Lane than she was into him. She was kind of spunky, daring, out there, risk-taking person that if something didn't work, she just was out. And that's kind of how I felt about this Lois Lane. I thought she did an excellent job, right? We're looking at Krypto. Let's get into the 800-pound gorilla in the room. A lot of people thought this was to steal the film show with Krypto. A lot of people didn't think Krypto was going to work at all. I thought Krypto worked great in this film. Yeah, he taps more into the comic book elements of the film, but there's just some good energy with Krypto. I think he works, especially we get to this very heavy spoiler territory at the end, which we're heading to. You should be out of here by now if you don't want to see the spoilers. But of course, we get to learn that he is really Supergirl's dog, right? And that is the big surprise at the end that I thought fit well in the film. I like how Supergirl is depicted. She's always kind of depicted as this young teenager that's kind of partyish, kind of defiant to Clark, who she's actually older than, but because of the situation with her travels and her getting knocked off course and how relativity and time works, she ends up being kind of the younger sibling, right, the cousin. The Justice League, right? Let's touch on that a little bit. The Justice Gang, they're not the Justice League yet. There is a lot of people talk about how there's not really Easter eggs in here, and that's true. They're not laying heavy on any of that. It's not really, but if you guys notice, when they go to see Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl, and they're kind of sitting around, they're at the, I was trying to read the title of the building. It's supposed to be like the Hall of Justice, right? If those of you all who are old enough to remember Super Friends or caught the Super Friends cartoon, that building is looks exactly like the hall of justice we see in the animated series, right? And I just love that. I as a kid, I just went crazy for that, because when I would come home from school, that building was just so iconic, how they'll show them line up in front of them. So it looks like James Gunn may be building a royal, and if he is, that's going to be so awesome to see, right? Just an excellent film. James Gunn couldn't have done he done an excellent job. I don't think he wasted any material or any sources. I think he put in there exactly what he needed to put in there for us to be ready to see the next movie with Superman in it, or something from that Superman world, right? Now, another person who shows up in there is the Peacemaker. Now, here's the crazy thing. I've never seen the Peacemaker series, but it's no surprise that in the Peacemaker series, I did see clips of the final episode, right, of the first season, where the Justice League kind of shows up, right, and he's cursing them out, and it's the actual, Justice League, right? It's the actual, characters, right, from the film. And I was like, okay, that is so awesome to tie that in. But Peacemaker is in the he's in the in the Superman movie, so I like that. That's gonna make me go watch season 1, catch up to season 2, and yeah, I think that's awesome, the tie-in, and it's all part of that world building. So excellent, guys, excellent film, right? Guy Gardner, a lot of people was wondering, is he gonna be too goofy for the film? Guy Gardner fits in excellent with the film. I like the he's very funny, but it's comedy that works, right? It's not like the stupid comedy you get, when people try to put comedy in. James Gunn comedy actually works. It's funny in comic book movies. Like, because trust me, guys, I'm one of those people who say, why do you mess up scenes putting in the stupid comedy bits and stuff, right? It was something that would happen in a lot of Star Wars films that I hated. But let me tell you something, for whatever reason, James Gunn has a formula where it works. Now, if you're also like me and you love Creatures Commandos, right? There's, I don't want to say Easter eggs again, but there is, like, in the Baravia world, right? That's kind of, I believe they go to in Creatures Commandos, right? When they have the princess, now they have a president, right? There's that office or the palace she lives in. And that seems like to be the same palace that the princess lived in. And so I just love all that connection, right? So James Gunn's doing that little Marvel connection stuff, but it's not poured on you too heavy to where everything has to connect, but you just love seeing that, oh, this is all part of the world James Gunn's building. This is real to his world and such. Another thing, a lot of you all who are concerned about Batman, Batman's gonna work well in this world, man. It's gonna be so exciting to see a Batman in James Gunn's world, right? Because remember, this isn't like the Matt Reeves Batman or the Christopher Nolan Batman. This is basically the would be more like close to a Michael Keaton type Batman. I think that's gonna work in the James Gunn world, right? And whenever you think about it, I think this is a good point to make too, to especially like Snyderverse fans who hate James Gunn. They hate this kind of world that Superman inhabits. That if you're gonna have a Superman or a world like this, it would have to be this way. If you think back to Michael Keaton's Batman, right? How many of us loved that first Batman, that first dark version of Batman? That was kind of comical, goofy, dark humor with the creator of the geez, what's wrong with me today? Why can't I remember the guy who Tim Burton's Batman, right? Tim Burton, remember how Batman was menacing, and he was in this kind of crazy dark gothic world of Tim Burton, but he was serious. That Michael Keaton gave these serious. That's what James Gunn's doing, right? That's how I think of what James Gunn does with this Superman, right? And what it does is, whenever you try to make a superhero film and you can't find out what's missing, that's what's missing. That's why Marvel dominated DC. Think about what I'm saying, Snyderverse fans. The reason that Marvel dominated DC is because at times it would just be a comic book movie that didn't take itself serious, but it would mingle with more serious characters, right? That happened to be part of that universe as well. If you try to make like a full serious comic book movie, like say you try to make a Oscar-winning Superman, like a Christopher Nolan version of Superman, where he's a serious person, right? You're gonna get some kind of disconnect or audience fatigue. And I don't know if you're kind of like in this uncanny valley where you just can't accept this as reality, but whatever it is that has stopped these superhero films from being a success, Marvel long ago found the formula, right? When they have like Tony Stark flying around being funny, you know, in a comic book world, but kind of being, you know, at the same time in a serious world. James Gunn knows how to do that, and that's why it works, right? And that's why you can have these comical bits like here with Superman and Krypto, and you're not taken out of the film. You're like, okay, this is their universe, right? It just happens that this is how, when those metahumans were discovered, it just happens, this is how it goes, right? So this was a great film, guys. I would debate anybody who says otherwise, that this wasn't an A+ film. For what its mission was and what it needed to do, I think it nailed it perfectly, right? I don't think it could have been too much any better, right, than this. I don't think it could have, with the characters that were involved, what it needs to do, the type of people that Superman's gonna be mingling with. Because again, guys, the Superman mythos and story, I am a diehard Superman fan, but the origin story, standalone Superman, guys, we've told that story for the last 40 years. Don't you think it's time to move Superman successfully to the next area? And when I say successfully, I don't mean guys, like poor attempts at putting Superman in the Justice League, right? Like what we got in the Snyderverse. I mean, like, it works, people like it. It feels natural, and Marvel just, like, even how Hawk Girl was interacting with Guy Gardner and Mr. Terrific, I felt like I had been watching them on screen together for years. It didn't feel forced. It just felt like they had been doing that a while, and they knew Superman, and they intermingled with Superman, and it was a kind of camaraderie, good energy, but Superman wasn't with them, but he would work with them. I loved it because they were together, like they were friends, knew each other. So you don't have to go through all of setting up, meeting every single character in this world, right, to, you know, get us into the world where we can have enough material to digest it, right? And so all that was excellent. Mr. Terrific was excellent. He did a great job. I'm not going to go deep into spoiler territory on that. Here's what I think the spoiler is going to be as I get out of the film. Just going to talk about, we know that, what do you want to call him, Bizarro Superman, Ultraman, it was just a clone, right? That's the part. Even though I was getting spoiled on a lot of things before I saw the movie, I managed to not know who was in the Ultraman suit, right? It's David Cornsweet. Not a big deal. I kind of would have liked if they'd have showed like a distorted, ugly clone version of him, where the clone and stuff didn't take well. But it was just him with long hair, and I thought it was fine, you know. I like that they got rid of Ultraman, right? So he won't be in the future. You kind of throw him in those pocket dimensions, he's locked in that pocket dimension like a Bizarro character, or maybe he's like an amalgam of different characters or whatnot. But I was fine with that. And then, of course, at the end, we get Supergirl, who's gonna, with Millie Alcott, where they're gonna tell a more serious story, and she kind of fits in the, you know, she's being comical. She fits in the, you know, in the story, right, as his younger cousin and so on. But as she, you know, goes into her own story and her travels and what she had to go through on her, what will be her revenge story, right? If they're going to the area of the comic books, right, and her situation with Darkseid. I know Millie Alcott to be from the House of Dragon series, to be a very good actress, and so I think she's going to do an excellent job in, you know, fitting into that story and telling that story. I thought she did an excellent job. I love that those end scenes with her and Krypto, that how Crypto acts is normal to her. That's why he's doing Superman like that, you know. Even though, him being a troubled dog, being a depiction of James Gunn, real life dog, he's just perfect for Kara, for Supergirl. And I just love that. Did I leave anything out in this film that I want to talk about right now? Because I don't want to just go on for hours with this. Some people are saying it's the best Superman film to date. In some ways, they're correct. I still like the heavy energy of Chris Reeve's Superman. There's just something about that Superman, the storyline, it being the origin story, it being a perfectly told origin story that just stands alone and fits on its own. But definitely this. And that's exactly what it is. This is the best continuation of Superman, right? And that story moves forward. This is the best. This David Cornsweet is the best successor of Superman as a full Superman character to date on film. I leaned over to Smallville, and that's another thing. Let me get that spoiler in there real quick. A lot of people are saying, well, we have the surprise of Superman, right? Finding out his parents, and it was Bradley Cooper playing Jor-El, but that they wanted him to come to the planet and rule. Apparently, it's the recording as it's put together by Lex Luthor and the Authority. It's a real message, right? And in many depictions of Superman, Jor-El is good. In Smallville, he uses that as trials for Superman, which it could end up to be that in this version of Superman too, which is taken from Smallville. That's kind of paying homage to you Smallville fans. You guys remember that Jor-El was bad through most of the seasons, but they were just trials for Superman. And maybe that it could be, I would love if they put that in there later on, because a lot of people think it destroys Superman. Those are people who are not familiar with Smallville, the Smallville mythos of Superman. It does not destroy Superman. In Smallville, it was used as a series of trials, right? To growing pains to help Clark grow up, to grow into Superman, to know that sacrifices have to be made and so on. And it was just well done in Smallville. And of course, many of you all know James Gunn is friends with Michael Rosenbaum in real life, the guy who played Lex Luthor on Smallville. And I was hoping that Michael Rosenbaum could, have had some type of cameo or something, but maybe he might be used in a later. He might get to be the Flash, right? Who knows? Because he was the voice of the Flash, and he might get to play an older version of the Flash or something like that. That'd be cool. So we don't know yet. We're going to see. But this was a great film. Let's see, did I leave anything else out, right? Let's see. I feel like I'm missing something to try to come full circle with it. But I think we got everything. All the characters, whether it been Jimmy Olsen, Cat Grant, Perry Grant, I think they all just did a good job, right? I think they did enough of what needed to be done, for this particular film. Because remember, it's still supposed to be a Superman film, so a lot of people have problems with a lot of side characters, right? They weren't supposed to have like real large parts, but for what it was, I think it did a great job. Of course, we had General Flag from Creatures Commandos. I like that tie-in, right? Will the Creatures Commandos ever end up with a live-action film? Who knows, right? But anyway, guys, that's all I want to say in this particular video. I thought the film was genius. I hope I tapped into everything that that was, pretty much overall important. But that's all I want to say. Tell me what your opinion is. Tell me what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. Let's talk about it. Because I think I can convince you as to why so much stuff worked in this film. Of course, The Fortress of Solitude, excellent. We saw it in the previews. The robots, I thought was excellent in the film, right? So, gonna leave it at that. Guys, if you like content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to also join my social media network. You can earn money on there. You can earn money. You can post your comments there. You can post videos there. You can do anything you do on social media. And you can earn cryptocurrency doing it. So that ought to be fun. If you're a subscriber of ours, check it out, right? I'll try to leave a link. Try to make sure I don't forget to leave a link in the description. Check it out. Go ahead and sign up over there. Have some fun over there. Earn you a little bit of crypto. You can trade for Bitcoin and whatnot. And I think you'll like it. But that's all I'm going to say in this particular video. Till next time, as always, take care of yourselves and each other.